Hello, welcome. My name is Sarah. I'm a tarot and oracle card reader. This is my channel, occosmik. I thought, right, I've got general, open, collective tarot reading that I'm going to go through. I've just been chatting away and realised that I didn't press record. So that's so okay. There is some information in my description box just for you as a viewer. Might be helpful to have a quick skim through it before you watch any videos, after you watch any videos, or just at your own leisure, whatever. But yeah, okay, so oh, right, there is a very interesting astrological transit happening currently. Started on March the 27th, 2025, and it will end on, I think it's December the 20th this year. Okay, so it's about 9 months, and it's the transit of Black Moon Lilith in the sign of Scorpio. So it's difficult to overstate the potency of those two archetypes together. Is an incredibly potent, fertile transit, just phenomenally so, actually, not to over exaggerate, but it's just very much able to pack a punch. So I've got the main cards of the spread. I've had this spread open for longer than I usually do, just because my usual filming has kind of been disrupted. So it wasn't necessarily an intentional thing, because when I leave spreads open like that, kind of indefinitely, the information and message just kind of keeps coming through, and it can be quite confusing, or not confusing, but just a lot of information that is then information that I have. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Oh, I think I'm feeling a bit like I need to chill out, actually. Right. Okay, why was I saying that about there? Because I kept getting information, right, and the energy sort of just shifts and moves. Okay, so I can read the cards and have a message, and then more information will come, and then it's like the message can kind of change and shift. And that did happen, but there is this kind of constant, perhaps somewhat quieter or more delicate energy, like story, message, that has just consistently been there, even though there was all this other kind of message swirling about it, like the kind of crux of what is wanting to be communicated has just sort of stayed the same. So that is, I'm telling you that for a reason, I think, because the energy of Lilith in Scorpio is this huge kind of collective thing, right? We're all sort of moving through that, moving through us as well. It's kind of really powerful energy of like change and transformation and just bigness. But it's kind of like a backdrop right? It's like the scenery, the stage, the set on which lots of stuff is playing out, right? With that same kind of energetic signature. Okay, so I'll just go into what Black Moon Lilith is, talk about Black Moon Lilith a little bit, and the sign of Scorpio as well, just because having an understanding or some knowledge of what that broader energy is helpful. It's going to be helpful for people. So Black Moon Lilith in astrology, right, she is not a celestial object. She is a mathematical point. So when like the earth orbits the sun, the moon orbits the earth, they do it in like an elliptical shape. And within that elliptic, there are two foci. One of them is the earth and the other is what's known as the empty focus. That empty focus is known as Black Moon Lilith, right? And it's on the same degree as the lunar apogee. And the lunar apogee is just like the furthest possible point the moon can be from the earth. So that idea of like distance, empty focus, right? So there are two, like astrologers can use two different calculations for Black Moon Lilith. There is a mean calculation and there is a true. The main kind of distinction between them, as I understand it, is that the mean has a movement that is much more steady, like a clock, whereas the true kind of bounces back and forth a bit more. Yeah, it doesn't have that same steady motion. I think the energy of the true Lilith is, well, I think they're actually both coming through in the main cards of the message, actually. So steadiness, and then one that's kind of less so. Right, so Lilith is a really ancient archetype. There is lots of lore associated with her. So in Kabbalistic tradition, Lilith was the name given to Adam's first wife, and Lilith and Adam were created at the same time as each other, and they were both created out of clay, out of the earth. But so this equality wasn't accepted by Adam, and Lilith, in her anger, pronounced the name of God, and she actually kind of cast herself out of the Garden of Eden. She just took herself right on out of there. Okay. Yes. So that is some of her lore, like a bit of a kind of origin-y story type thing. There's also like a short written story in a Hebrew text, like a medieval Hebrew text called Ben Sira, which again, as I understand it, I think is like a collection of quite humorous stories. So Lilith, in that one, there is a particular story where her and Adam are arguing about who goes on top when they're having sex. Adam says he's got to go on top and Lilith says that she has got to go on top. And Adam kind of wins the argument. And in that story, Lilith is cast out. She is cast out of the Garden of Eden, and she has to go live at the edge of a desert. That is where she's cast out to. On the edge of that desert, she makes a deal with 3 angels, and she has hundreds of babies every day. That's what she is apparently doing on the edge of a desert. She's having hundreds of babies every day. And there are some sources that say she has got a demon lover called Samael. And in other sources, she is out there having all those thousands of babies by herself. Okay, so that idea of casting out, right? So the empty focus, the lunar apogee, that idea of being sort of out and away from. So in the Ben Sira as well, there are sort of stories about Lilith where she's kind of, she tickles babies' feet to make them laugh as well. But she's been known about for many, many, many centuries before the Ben Sira was written. But people were actually scared of her. And part of her lore was that during childbirth, she would come and steal the babies and kill the mothers. And then in sort of the late 18th century, she started to become known in Christian Europe because she was in Goethe's Faust. But so in Faust, again, she was represented as Adam's first wife. Excuse me, whilst I just retie my hair. She was represented as Adam's first wife, but also as like a dangerous succubus. And she was kind of a warning to Faust against temptation, right? But she was described as like a woman of great beauty with these really kind of, really formidable seductive powers. Particularly her hair. So she had very seductive hair. So I've written here like sexy lady with gorgeous hair, very powerful. So she just started to kind of enter or get built up in the collective imagination and consciousness as a kind of a terrifying, sexy person. A kind of devouring female figure who was kind of demonized, right? Demonized, and like certain things being like over exaggerated about her. So in other cultures, there are sort of similar goddesses, deities. So in the Sumerian pantheon, you've got Inanna, Ishtar. She was a powerful Mesopotamian goddess of love, fertility, war, and wisdom. And she was one of the most important as well, was Inanna. Very sensual, a lot of sensuality. And, you know, there are stories like Inanna's descent into the underworld, which is very Scorpionic. And there's the Epic of Gilgamesh as well. Right, but Inanna was like all of these deities that I'm going to mention. They're all sort of considered quite complex. But often there is just this theme of they are very benevolent, but also destructive in some way, like this paradoxical nature. But I've written here, it's like everyone and everything, right? Because we can all be benevolent and we can all be destructive. But there seems to be like a particular showing of that in the lore and the stories associated with these female deities. One who really stood out to me though was the Hindu goddess Kali, partly because I've got a deck and she's in that, so I've got her out. So Kali is very powerful again. She's associated with time, death, destruction and rebirth. She's often depicted with a very terrifying appearance, not so much in this particular card, to be fair. Terrifying appearance, but she represents like a transformative and liberating force. She's the embodiment of the cyclical nature of death and rebirth. She's fierce and transformative. So although her appearance can be terrifying, she's seen as a symbol of strength, empowerment, and the ability to overcome limitations and attachments. That's important here. So all of those things are also associated in some way with Lilith, okay? There's like commonality between these deities. So Kali, she's fierce, nurturing, dynamic, transformative, complex and multifaceted. She's often depicted with dark or blue skin. She has multiple arms. She has a garland of skulls and a skirt of severed arms. It's not in this one. And she's often sort of, in iconography, she's often dancing and standing on her consort Shiva, who is the Hindu god of, it's like a destructive energy, destruction, creation, I think. Should have checked that. Right, Kali's prominent in Hindu tantric traditions as well. She's worshipped as divine mother, mother of the universe, and divine feminine energy. Because again, like Lilith, Scorpio, there's a lot of sexual there's a lot of sexual kind of energy in those two archetypes. They kind of typify that. Right, so Kali, we'll be seeing Kali again soon. So Lilith's iconography, she's closely associated with the night and with the moon, femininity, mystery. She has a connection to the primal and sometimes monstrous aspects of nature, so strong associations with the wilderness. Really rich and varied iconography, often depicted as some kind of night creature or a demon of the night. She's considered a primordial being. So the primordial card has come out here in the main cards of the spread. So a primordial being, right, first of all, she's always been there. A really consistent thing is she is depicted as being very beautiful, like very, very beautiful. Sometimes she's depicted with wings as well. She also has associations with the serpent. A serpent has come out here. Right, and the serpent's a bit of a polyvalent symbol, right? It can be male, female, or self-created. And when it's coiled, it can be equated with cycles of manifestation as well. It's both solar and lunar, life and death, light and darkness, good and evil, wisdom and passion, healing and poison, preserver and destroyer. Yeah. So like paradox, but Lilith kind of illustrates quite well like dichotomy as well. But interestingly, for all this feminine energy I'm talking about, the serpent is actually, it's a phallic, procreative male force. But the feminine characteristics of it are the kind of secret, enigmatic and intuitional. Can symbolize the generative power of the earth as well. It's chthonic, sexual, funerary. This is, I think, quite important for the cards I'm going to discuss. The manifestation of force at any level, a source of all potentialities, both material and spiritual. Okay, so Lilith, I've shown these two cards already. I mean, she is all over the main cards of the spread here. Permeating. Right, as the energy of the transit will be kind of permeating people and situations and things on a big scale, because we're all experiencing it. So Lilith's associations are like the idea of outcast, outsider, like underdogs, the hidden, the unacknowledged, the idea of extremity, shame as well, shame, scandal, disreputableness. Neglected and unknown, okay? The neglected, the unknown, non-conformity. It's very powerful. She has a sense of humour, and she can signify like prodigious talent. Right, the wilderness, wild nature, wild true nature, creative sexual energy. And yeah, I've written here like dichotomy, a division or contrast between two things that are or are represented as being opposed or entirely different. But I've underlined are represented as being, because the idea, right, is we can be both. Can be both. We can be this one thing, we can also be the other. It's not mutually exclusive. So some of her dark themes are quite heavy, because it's ideas like things like enslavement, insanity, rage, exile, like hypersexuality, adultery, abuse. The lighter and brighter themes are like that prodigious creativity, love of the wilderness, magic, humour and comic timing, freedom and rebellion, non-conformity, healthy lust and sexual allure, fertility and childbirth. And then I've written in capital letters, I've highlighted it and I've circled it, thresholds, because there is most definitely a threshold, a kind of transition point being described in these main cards, okay? So archetypally, like, she's a rebel, independent, wild, and innocent in the wilderness, seductress, she's erotic, sexually liberated. She is at once the killer of infants and a mother of millions. So femme fatale, a joker, a comedian. She can be indicative of extraordinary or prolific talent as well. So many notes. Right, so the sign of Scorpio, spicy, man, spicy, very sexy archetype. Said, I think, associated with the Death card in the Major Arcana, which is one of the cards of Pluto, Pluto planet, but also god of the underworld in Roman mythology. The Death card hasn't come out here, but we do have Judgment, which is another card associated with Pluto. But this is like penultimate in the Major Arcana. This is a big energy, right? Like the biblical Day of Judgment. It's like that kind of really big rebirth energy. I'm filming this Easter weekend, actually. It's funny. Right. Okay, so Scorpio. Just be back in a minute. Okay, I'm back. Right, so the sign of Scorpio. That was where I was up to, right? I feel a bit kind of today. Right, so Lilith can increase the power that comes through any sign, so it can amplify it. So Lilith is incredibly potent and powerful, as is Scorpio. So when you kind of put those archetypes together, it's like, it's just like this amplified powerhouse of whoa. Yeah, okay. But right, so Lilith likes being in Scorpio. It's a comfortable placement for her. She can express herself very powerfully there. Okay. So it's a very, very, very highly fertile transit as well. Everything that I've just said about like Lilith, and in fact all of the deities, and death, the natural process of death, right? Earth in the winter time, everything gets mulched down and becomes fertilizer for the new growth. It's a very, very highly fertile, quite sexy transit, okay? It's sexy and fertile. Scorpio is a very generative sign as well. There is something about that in relation to money as well, because Scorpio rules the 8th house in the zodiac. So the associations with the 8th house, when I go through those shortly, we'll give context to that. But there's the really generative energy of Scorpio, and then this kind of money aspect as well. But there's also that idea of extremity, okay? That idea of extremity. So it can be like ridiculous quantities of money and then no money at all. But there's also an ability to generate massive amounts of money. Interestingly, Jeff Bezos and Steve Jobs both were born with their natal Lilith and Scorpio, so give a bit of an example. But the extremes of it, right, with fucking Bezos especially. So, but fittingly, actually, Lilith can show us a place that can be very creative, but also very hungry, so that you're like hard to satiate. So Scorpio is a fixed water sign. It's represented by the scorpion, also by the eagle, the phoenix, and the serpent. Serpent's a big energy here. Serpent. Okay. Right, so, but all of those symbols are all sort of death, resurrection, regeneration symbols, okay? So some of the associations and attributions with the energy of Scorpio, okay, so very instinctual, extremely intuitive, focused, magnetic, mysterious, like strong-willed. Capital letters. Insightful with the darker side of things. They most certainly fucking are. Depth, right? Like deep, like there's this really deep aspect to Scorpionic energy. It's very compelling, very empowering, very, like I've said, very sexy, very seductive, okay? Big theme for the next 9 months, big theme. But there's also like a shadow of it, right? So like an unhealthy Scorpionic energy can be quite vindictive, like cruel, manipulative, can suppress desires and resist change and transformation. I've also added volatile to that. It can be quite a volatile energy as well. Right, so it's a symbol simultaneously of resistance, fermentation, death, dynamism, endurance and struggle. And I wrote this down. I thought this was really funny actually at the time, because I was looking at in a book that I've not looked in for a long time, and it's a dictionary of symbols that I think was written in the 1920s. So just the writing and the language reflects that. So I thought this was funny, which was primarily why I wrote it down. So a dialectic of destruction and creation, death and resurrection, damnation and salvation, the love song on the battlefield and the war cry on the fields of love. Bursting for fuller being, even if this involves living torn between divine vocation and diabolic temptation. It was the diabolic temptation that kind of got me. Scorpio can confidently stretch its wings in the midst of gales, storm and tragedy. So I thought that was quite dramatic and thus funny, but actually that is being reflected in the cards of the main spread. That is part of the message, albeit less dramatic, or you know, yeah. I don't think you have to choose between divine vocation and diabolic temptation. I think it's about balance and knowing how to kind of embody and negotiate certain energies, right? That's why it made me giggle. Okay. So the 8th house, just go over this quickly and then I'm going to get into the cards. It's half an hour again. Okay, so the 8th house is associated with transformation and our ability to change on a deep level. Us and collectively, like things generally, okay? Power, sex, depth, other people's resources, inheritance, obstacles, turnarounds in life, sudden events, deep emotions and turmoil, death and death-like events, hidden things, the occult and metaphysics and sort of interest in the same things, deep research and deep dive into any area at all, right? It's the idea of like uncovering hidden information, uncovering hidden things. It's the house of degenerate habits and regenerate habits. So degenerate habits like addictions and such things. Regenerate habits like detachment, are written from materialism or success, right? Because of all that. Because the money thing, it's a house that is associated with other people's money, right? So loans or unearned money, taxes, legacies, inheritance. It's the house of all those things. But remember, transformation and the ability to transform deeply, okay? So it is more one of the heavy hitting houses. Honestly, its themes are of a kind of heavier or more challenging nature, but that balance, right? That balance. It's the house of degeneration, but also regeneration as well. Okay. So that is all of that. So we get into the cards. So remember, I've kind of been through all that because I want to kind of give you a sort of backdrop to the energies of the next few months. It is kind of energetic context to two things. The ear popping this week, man. It's been a lot. Okay, so I'm going to get into these cards. So the first card we have out, no. It was that right to left thing again. It was the right to left. It was the Japanese that came. I did a reading and it was really strong, like read the cards from right to left, and it's the same here, like right to left. So we start over here. So actually, before I get into the cards, this particular message, like my readings don't follow on from each other necessarily, but there is often a kind of thread from one to the next, or that connects a previous reading to the one that I'm currently doing. And that is with this, but it came through particularly kind of strongly actually as like a response, like an answer, or like an explanation. Because in that previous reading, it was called What and Where is Zero, there was this idea of somebody sort of trying to pull someone through to a particular point. I won't go into it all here. It was a long video, but I think I kind of summarised the pulling through in the last sort of 10-15 minutes. So even just watching the last 10-15 minutes of it would be helpful. But really like the whole message. So this spread here, this is like an explanation as to why something cannot be rushed, right? Everything in its time has been emphasized a lot. Time with Kali, everything in its time. So yeah, the warning. So the coral snake is an energy of warning, okay? And it's a warning why the timing of something needs to be respected. Yeah. The timing of something needs to be respected. So this is, yeah, I think like a direct explanation as to why the timing of it has to be respected. It's kind of going into it. It's giving an explanation that is maybe wanted or needed, or somebody has been wondering about it. So the cards are like, right, this is why. But I understand that there would be an importance to kind of knowing a bit more about this. Okay. A bit of water. Right. Organised here. Right, so starting from the right to left, we've got this Knight of Cups and this coral snake, okay? So the coral snake is that idea of warning. It's Lilith coming in with a warning, but with love, with the Knight of Cups. Yeah, it's the Knight of the water element. Knight of the water element. So he's actually water and fire. The knights represent fire alongside the element that they're in. So fire and water, the fiery part of water. I've got written down here like water's power of solution. So Lilith is coming in with a warning that it is wise to heed. It's wise to heed the warning. Trusting to follow. Trusting to follow. Water's power of solution. So the warning might actually be a solution for something. A bit of an ointment, a bit of a balm. Okay. So she is coming in with a warning, okay? An ounce of prevention is better than a cure. I've written, do not ignore the warning. It is definitely coming in with love, but it's not something to be ignored, okay? Like the coral snake is like the most poisonous snake in North America. But if you recognize it by its colours, it can be avoided, right? Any harm can be prevented because you know what you're looking for. So when you're shown the warning, delivered the warning, it's like you can take heed of it. If you don't have the warning, you can't take heed, and that is where there might be some hurt or some damage to something. So the knight, got this idea of reclamation with the knight. I've written like Lilith's stories can have completion as well. Completion and resolution. The impetus for all manifestation. And there was this idea of the true will again that came through here. The impetus for all manifestation. The true will. Okay, so we went from the Knight, and then the next card out. The cards that came out were the Page of Cups with this primordial energy. And then we got the Conch as well, which was a bit of a kind of clarification card for me on what these two were talking about. So the Page of Cups. Excuse me one moment. The Page of Cups, right? The Page of Cups is a very receptive, very imaginative energy, right? Indicates like a really strong imagination and intuition. It's someone who's honest and they show up as themselves. They are true. Part of what they receive and then communicate as a warning. They are intuitively aware of something that they are then offering. They offer it outside of themselves. There's this idea of like inner turned outer. There's this power there as well, right? Because remember Lilith, primordial being. So this is, Lilith has shown up really strongly here in a way that perhaps wouldn't be expected. But the creativity, okay, the creativity with Lilith. So the Page is the earthy part of water. It's power to give substance to ideas, to support life and to form a basis of chemical combination. Faculty of crystallization. So there's all this imagination, intuition, and the ability to do something with it. So this is a person, is this? You've got two pages here. You've got two pages kind of looking at each other. But there's different stuff going on for either one of them. Got this Page of Wands and this Page of Cups. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is stop the video and do it as a two-parter, because I feel a little bit, I've just had a bit of a busy morning and like I can't really get into it the way that I need to, so I'm just going to have a little break. But I think I'll end this video. This can be part one and I'll do a part two and post them at the same time. Okay. All right, thank you.